It is commonly understood that when Mark has named a character in his Gospel account, particularly one who is neither a major player in the stories like Peter and the disciples, nor a public figure like Pilate or Herod, it is likely that he's done so because they are well known to the community to whom he's writing his Gospel. It's likely then that Alexander and Rufus were well known in the early church. Their story of faith maybe begins when their father is compelled by Roman soldiers to carry the cross of a man condemned to die. The events of Jesus' crucifixion echo the harrowing words of Psalm 22. Verse 7 of this psalm reads, "All who see me mock me. They shake their heads." And verse 18, "They divide my clothes amongst themselves, and for my clothing they cast lots." It is only at his sham trial before the council, recorded in Mark 14, verses 61 to 62, that Jesus publicly names himself as the Messiah. But now the chief priests and scribes use the same title to insult him, seeing his execution at the hands of the Roman occupying powers as sure and certain proof that he cannot be God's anointed. The last words that Mark reports Jesus uttering are themselves taken from Psalm 22, verse 1. my God, why have you forsaken me?" And as he breathes his last, the curtain of the temple, significant because it would be pulled across the entrance to the Holy of Holies, the most sacred place in the temple, where God himself was believed to dwell. This curtain is torn in two, from top to bottom. Mark gives us a number of interesting snapshots. A Roman centurion who sees the goodness of God in Jesus in the way that he dies. A group of women who have supported, provided for, and followed Jesus for some time. A member of the Jewish council who petitions Pilate to be able to take away the body of Jesus and bury it in a tomb sealed with a large stone. All of this leads us to one of the strangest things about Mark's Gospel: the ending. If we ignore the so-called shorter and longer endings of Mark, both of which we know to be later additions, the original ending we are left with is both abrupt and lacking in the glory of the other Gospels. The women who come to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body with spices find it empty, but for a young man in a white robe who tells them Jesus has risen, he is not here. They must pass on this news to Peter and the other disciples and say that Jesus will meet them in Galilee. But instead, trembling and bewildered, they flee the scene and say nothing to anyone because they are afraid. And there it ends. The ending is so peculiar that some have argued that Mark must have been prevented somehow from finishing his Gospel. But for others, the ending makes perfect sense. There is no need to say more, because the community receiving this Gospel are themselves very aware of what happened next. For their lives have been transformed by Jesus, the risen Lord.